What happens when a teacher's prejudice underestimates a student's potential? Maria, a determined young woman from a marginalized community, faces the challenge of proving herself in a classroom where one teacher's bias seems to hold her back at every turn. But when the Teacher of the Year award is announced, it's not a teacher being recognized. It's Maria, the very student who was once doubted. This is the story of resilience, self-belief, and the power of breaking through the barriers of prejudice. Maria sat in the back of the classroom, her head slightly bent as she scribbled down notes. The words on the page were a blur, but the thoughts in her mind were clear. She was a dedicated student, determined to prove herself, despite the hurdles that seemed to rise at every step. Coming from a marginalized community, Maria had always felt the weight of expectations, both self-imposed and external. At school, she was often overlooked, her potential underestimated, especially by one person, Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis had been teaching for over 2 decades, his reputation as an old-school, strict educator preceding him. He was a man of routine, with little tolerance for students who didn't fit the mold. His biases were subtle but pervasive, particularly when it came to students of color. Maria, with her dark skin and braided hair, was never quite the ideal student in Mr. Davis's eyes. He didn't say it outright, but his condescending tone and dismissive comments made it clear. He didn't believe she could excel like her peers. Every time Maria spoke up in class, he was quick to undermine her. "Are you sure that's the right answer, Maria?" he would say, a raised eyebrow signaling doubt. When she turned in her assignments, they were often met with vague criticism. The praise he gave to others never extended to her. Yet, Maria didn't back down. Her resolve only grew stronger with each snide remark. She knew she was capable, and though it often felt like the world was against her, she was determined to rise above it all, even if it meant proving Mr. Davis wrong. The tension in the classroom reached its peak one afternoon when Mr. Davis assigned a project on global history. Maria had spent hours researching, compiling data, and crafting a presentation that she was proud of. She was eager to present her work, knowing it was one of her best efforts. When her turn came, she stood tall, ready to share her findings with the class. But as soon as she began speaking, Mr. Davis interrupted. "Maria," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "I'm not sure this is the kind of project we were expecting. You're really reaching here." He scanned her presentation with an exaggerated frown. "Some people just aren't cut out for this, you know? Maybe next time, try something simpler." The sting of his words hit harder than she anticipated. A few students shifted in their seats, casting uncomfortable glances at each other. But no one spoke up. Maria's heart pounded as she forced herself to continue, but the damage was done. She could feel her classmates' eyes on her, the sense of humiliation thick in the air. As she sat back down, her hands trembled. Her mind raced, fighting the urge to burst into tears. Why did he always do this to me? She had worked so hard, and yet, it felt as though he was intent on making her feel small. Despite the crushing blow, Maria refused to let it break her. She channeled the pain into determination, vowing to prove him wrong. She poured herself into her studies, working late into the night, determined to show that she was more than capable. Some teachers and students noticed the tension between them, though no one addressed it directly. A few teachers seemed sympathetic to Maria, offering kind words in passing. But most stayed quiet, too afraid or indifferent to intervene. It only fueled Maria's resolve to rise above it all. The announcement of the Teacher of the Year award hung in the air, a spark of excitement buzzing through the school. The annual ceremony was fast approaching, and the faculty and students alike speculated about who might receive the prestigious honor. There was an undercurrent of tension as names floated around, but it wasn't just the students who were curious. Teachers were on edge too. Maria had heard whispers about the award, but she never thought much of it. She had always kept a low profile, focusing on her studies and extracurriculars without seeking the spotlight. Yet in the months following Mr. Davis's cruel remarks, something had shifted inside her. The sting of his words had pushed her to prove her worth. Not just to him, but to herself. Maria dove into everything with unmatched passion. She excelled in her advanced science project, led a community outreach program for underprivileged youth, and even helped organize a charity event for a local food bank. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. A few teachers, particularly those who had witnessed her transformation, began to see her in a new light. Maria had become a leader, both in and outside the classroom. Her growth undeniable. At the school assembly, the principal stood at the podium, announcing the Teacher of the Year award. The tension was palpable as the crowd waited for the reveal. To everyone's surprise, the principal didn't call out a teacher's name. He called out Maria's. The room fell silent in shock. Maria has demonstrated what true leadership looks like, the principal said. She has overcome challenges and inspired us all with her resilience. Mr. Davis's face went pale. He stared at Maria in disbelief as she stood to accept the award, the irony thick in the air. The girl he'd belittled had become the reason for the school's most prestigious recognition. As Maria stood before the crowd, clutching the Teacher of the Year award, she felt a wave of emotion rise within her. The auditorium was silent, all eyes on her. Her classmates, teachers, and even Mr. Davis stared, stunned by the unexpected turn of events. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she knew this moment wasn't just for her. It was for every student who had ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed. With a deep breath, Maria began her speech. I stand here today not just as a student who's won an award, but as someone who's learned the value of believing in herself, even when others didn't. Resilience isn't about never falling, it's about rising each time we're knocked down. There were moments when I didn't think I could keep going, but I kept pushing, because I knew my worth. I knew I had something to offer the world. As she spoke, she noticed Mr. Davis's face, a mixture of disbelief and discomfort. His eyes were fixed on her, but his usual smug confidence was gone. The realization was clear on his face. He had never thought Maria capable of such success, let alone a moment like this. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched the armrest of his chair, unable to look away. Before Maria could continue, the headmaster stepped up to the microphone, addressing the crowd. This award is a reminder that every student, regardless of background, deserves encouragement and the chance to reach their full potential. Our role as educators is to lift up, not to hold back. Let's remember how powerful our words can be. Maria took her moment to speak directly to her classmates and teachers. Thank you to those who believed in me, even when others didn't. Prejudice can hold us back, but we must never let it define us. To anyone out there who's been told they can't, prove them wrong. She paused, her eyes briefly meeting Mr. Davis before turning back to the audience. We all have the power to achieve greatness. With a final nod to the crowd, Maria stepped down, leaving behind a stunned teacher, a changed classroom, and a message that would resonate for years to come. In the weeks following Maria's momentous win, the school community rallied around her, eager to celebrate her growth and success. The principal called an assembly to formally recognize the significance of her achievement, framing it as a reminder of the power of resilience. Maria's journey, the principal said, is a testament to the strength that comes when we support each other, regardless of our differences. It is a call for all of us to examine our actions and words, ensuring that we create an environment where every student can thrive. The school took proactive steps in addressing bias, with teachers attending workshops focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The atmosphere shifted, becoming one of genuine support. Students began to speak up more for each other, and teachers started offering more encouragement, fostering an environment where everyone felt valued. Maria had sparked something bigger than herself, a movement towards equality and respect. Meanwhile, Mr. A. Davis was left in a quiet corner of his own thoughts. After Maria's award, he couldn't shake the image of her standing tall, the look of pride in her eyes as she accepted her recognition. He had spent years dismissing students like her, not seeing their potential simply because of where they came from, or what they looked like. Slowly, he began to understand how his prejudice had clouded his judgment, holding back not only Maria, but countless other students who had been quietly waiting for the chance to prove themselves. Maria, however, wasn't focused on what had happened in the past. She moved forward with renewed confidence, taking every opportunity to inspire others. She continued to excel in her academics and leadership roles, becoming a mentor to younger students. Her story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that no one's worth should ever be determined by the biases of others. As she found her voice, she knew that her journey had only just begun.